Tonight, some new reaction to pushback from congressional Republicans to a holdover from the Obama presidency and his Justice Department. The GOP is calling it a, quote, slush fund that funnels money away from those who deserve it and gives it to the former president's political allies. So what's happening here? Trace Gallagher, live in our West Coast newsroom to explain. Hi, Trace.
Hey, Martha, when the Department of Justice takes legal action against corporations and big banks for bad behavior, like, for example, their part in the mortgage meltdown of 2008, the banks and businesses are often eager to settle. Some of that settlement money goes to victims, some goes back to the Treasury, and some goes to nonprofit organizations. Now, congressional investigators say more than $3 billion went into that nonprofit fund, or slush fund, as some Republicans call it. But the DOJ settlements don't specify exactly who gets that extra money, and the House Judiciary Committee says the Obama administration gave it to progressive groups like the National Council of La Raza, the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, and the National Urban League, organizations that promote liberal causes and push for Democratic votes. The DOJ says because the money is donated voluntarily, that it's all on the up and up. And the Government Accountability Office says the fund does not circumvent congressional authority to control the nation's purse strings. But the conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch calls it a shakedown, pure and simple, saying the money should all go back to taxpayers. And here's what the Government Accountability Institute told Fox late last year. Watch.
But to turn it into political activism, is absurd. And, it's something that I think requires a congressional investigation, and people at DOJ need to be held into account.
And as we said, Congress is now investigating, and Republicans in both the House and Senate have introduced legislation to stop the, quote, settlement slush funds.
Sounds like a racket. Trace, thank you. So joining us to shed some light on what this really means is Governor Mike Huckabee. Governor, welcome. Good to see you tonight. I mean,
thank you, Martha.
Volkswagen settles, and and all the people who were mistreated by the banks. We heard so much about it, and didn't you just assume that the money was going to the people who got hurt in those transactions? I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is unbelievable. Somebody ought to go to prison for this. I mean, this is worse than a mafia shakedown, because at least if the mafia shakes you down for protection, your store doesn't burn down. But this is a case where the liberals have played Robin Hood. They've stolen from the government, the taxpayers, and they've given it to their pals. It's really outrageous. And I think that part of it that is so frustrating, imagine, for example, if under a Republican Department of Justice, the Department of Justice had allocated money to the National Right to Life, or if they'd allocated it to the NRA. Right. Can you imagine how that would have gone over with the Democrats? I don't think very well.
Senator Langford of Oklahoma and House Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte are behind this Stop Settlement Slush Fund Act of 2017. I mean, this is what we talk about when you talk about draining the swamp, right? I mean, this is pretty murky swamp here.
Well, it's real murky swamp, and the sad thing is it's taxpayer money that should have gone either to the customers of an organization fined. Keep in mind how simple this is. You're a bank, you get fined. Well, instead of paying the full fine to the government, to the Treasury Department, or giving it back to your customers, you instead make a donation to some liberal group. Now, look, Martha, I don't care if the donation is to a liberal or conservative group. This violates the Constitution because only Congress can appropriate money. This is outrageous.
Yeah, and, when you look at the protection of the system in D.C., they looked into it. That both the Government Accountability Office and the Congressional Research Service concluded that the settlement agreements did not violate Congress's power of the purse. So, they sort of circled the wagons on this, right?
Well, sure, they're protecting each other, but I think any simple reading of the Constitution says that you don't have bureaucrats who can just create money out of thin air that doesn't have an appropriation from Congress. Congress has the power of the purse. If it's not an appropriation, I don't care if it's at the state or the federal level. The executive branch can't just go out and say, we'd like to spend some money. Doesn't matter whether Congress has approved it. We're going to spend it because we want to. It doesn't work like that.
I mean, how about maybe paying a little bit of that down with the money? But it has to be dispersed to different organizations. Unbelievable. Governor Huckabee, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martha.
So it is March 1 today, and it begins Women's History Month. So tonight we're going to show you a quote from Margaret Thatcher, one of the most influential politicians of the 20th century. Born the daughter of a grocer, she ascended the ranks of British politics, became the first female prime minister.